Warriors, welcome back to Gods of Alliance. If you're here, it means you want power, knowledge, and control over the battlefield. This is not luck, this is strategy. Let's break the game together. Today, we finally step into something new. A new hero, a new direction, a new type of chaos. Kendle. And honestly, this is one of the most interesting first looks we've had in a long time. Because from the moment you start reading her mechanics, from the moment you begin connecting her skills together, one thing becomes very clear. This hero is not built around safe gameplay. She is not built around simple rotations, and she is definitely not built around passive damage. Kendle is built around pressure, sacrifice, amplification, and constant interaction with her own team, and that immediately makes her different from most mages currently inside the game. Now today is not about overreacting. It's not about calling her broken before testing, and it's definitely not about fake hype. This is a real first look. We are going to understand her identity, understand her mechanics, understand what direction she is trying to push chaos teams toward, and over the next days we are going to go deeper with real testing, real fights, real combinations, guides, counters, and synergies. But today, we begin with understanding who Kendle actually is. And right from the start, her identity is already extremely clear. Backline mage. Way of chaos. Built around sacrifice mechanics, pure damage, magical critical hits, and pressure that keeps building during the fight. And honestly, warriors, that combination alone already sounds dangerous. Because chaos heroes have never been about safety. They have always been about risk and reward. They push limits. They manipulate health. They sacrifice stability in exchange for explosive potential. And Kendle fits perfectly into that ecosystem because everything in her kit revolves around turning sacrifice into power. Now, before we even touch the skills, let's quickly look at the direction of her build, because this already tells us a lot about how she is meant to scale. Her glyphs reinforce exactly what you would expect from an aggressive mage designed to survive long enough to keep applying pressure. Magic attack, magical critical hit chance, intelligence, health, and magic defense. Nothing random, nothing confused, everything aligned towards sustained magical pressure and survivability. Then we move into artifacts, and again the direction becomes even clearer. Lord Beholder increases magical critical hit chance. Torture Secrets gives additional magical critical hit chance and health. Ring of Intelligence boosts her primary stat, so immediately we understand something very important. Kendle is not just designed to deal damage, she is designed to amplify how that damage behaves. Critical scaling, pressure, survivability, synergy, everything connected. And now, we move into the real core of the hero, the skills. Because this is where Kendle starts becoming very different. We begin with Lava Kiss, and honestly this skill alone already establishes her identity perfectly because Kendle attacks the enemy with the lowest health, dealing magic damage instantly. And then things become much more dangerous, because while her own health remains above 30%, she continues dealing pure damage every second to that target, while sacrificing 10% of her own health in the process. And this immediately changes how you look at her. Because this is not random poke damage. This is execution pressure. Kendle chooses a target and commits to killing it. And the craziest part is that the effect only ends when the target dies. That is huge. Because now the enemy cannot simply survive the first hit and move on. No, the pressure continues every second. And since the additional damage is pure damage, it bypasses traditional defensive mitigation completely. Armor doesn't matter. Magic defense doesn't matter. The damage simply keeps going. And suddenly you begin to understand why sustain around Kendle becomes so important. Because she is literally burning herself alive to maintain pressure. And that creates immediate synergy possibilities with heroes like Aiden, who constantly manipulates health and sustain, or Zisha, who already thrives in sacrifice-based ecosystems. Kendle wants healing. Kendle wants sustain. Kendle wants protection, so she can stay above 30% health and continue applying destruction non-stop. And honestly, for a first skill, this is already fantastic design because you can immediately see purpose behind it. Now we move into Sweet Torture. And this is where Kendle stops looking like a selfish mage and starts becoming something much more dangerous for chaos teams. because this skill increases magical critical hit chance for Kendle and for allies who have taken damage from crit, their own skills or allied skills since the last activation. And suddenly, sacrifice becomes amplification. Everything connects. The more your team manipulates health, the more value Kendle creates. And this is where the chaos synergy becomes obvious, because heroes constantly interacting with sacrifice mechanics are now directly feeding her amplification system. Xisha immediately comes to mind again. Aiden again becomes incredibly important. Even Kendle herself activates these conditions through Lava Kiss. So now we are no longer looking at isolated mechanics. We are looking at an ecosystem. One skill sacrifices health. Another rewards the sacrifice with magical critical hit chance. Suddenly, your entire team begins scaling upward as the fight continues. And honestly, warriors, this is where Kendle starts looking less like a normal mage and more like an engine for chaos compositions. Because this amplification is not selfish. It affects the team. It rewards interaction. It rewards coordinated sacrifice mechanics. And that opens the door to very explosive situations, because magical critical hits massively increase burst consistency and pressure windows for mage-based teams. And honestly, this is exactly the type of design chaos needed. Because Kendle is not trying to fit everywhere. She is trying to dominate in the right environment. Now we move deeper. And this is where things become even more interesting, because Kendle begins transforming allies themselves into weapons. Friendly fire. And yes, the name alone already tells you exactly where this is going. Kendle ignites the ally with the highest percentage of maximum health, causing their attacks to deal additional pure damage to enemies. And immediately this changes the dynamic of the fight, because now your ally is no longer just attacking normally. Every hit they land becomes additional pressure generated by Kendle herself. And again, pure damage. No defensive mitigation. No normal protection, just direct punishment. And this becomes terrifying on fast-attacking heroes or aggressive frontline heroes, because every attack suddenly carries extra destructive value attached to it. But what makes this even more interesting is the condition behind it, because the effect only remains active while that ally stays above 40% health. So once again, sustain matters, healing matters, protection matters. And immediately you begin imagining combinations, because Aiden once again becomes incredibly valuable for maintaining the burning ally alive longer. Xisha once again interacts naturally with sacrifice ecosystems. Aggressive frontline attackers suddenly become extensions of Kendle's own pressure system. And this is where team building around her starts becoming fascinating, because you are no longer just picking heroes individually. You are choosing heroes based on how efficiently they interact with Kendle's mechanics. Who survives longest? Who attacks fastest? Who benefits from health manipulation? Who keeps pressure active? And suddenly, Kendle starts feeling much more like a battlefield amplifier than a traditional mage. But the best part? This skill cannot simply be stacked mindlessly, because it cannot affect an already burning ally, which introduces management and rotation into the gameplay instead of mindless spam. And honestly, that is fantastic design. Now we arrive at the final layer of her kit, Purge by Pain. And this is where everything finally comes together, because Kendle sacrifices a portion of her own health to unleash massive magical pressure against enemies, while empowering the overall destructive flow of her mechanics. And at this point, one thing becomes very clear. Kendle is not designed around burst alone. She is designed around escalation. The longer the fight progresses, the more interactions begin stacking. More sacrifice, more magical critical hit chance, more pressure, more pure damage, more amplification. And suddenly the enemy team is not just fighting a mage. They are fighting a system that keeps growing during the battle. And honestly, warriors, this is why Kendle immediately feels exciting. Not because we are calling her broken, not because we are pretending she already dominates the meta, but because her identity is extremely clear. She has direction, she has purpose, she has interaction, and, most importantly, she creates synergy. And in Hero Wars, synergy is what creates dangerous heroes. Now visually, she fits the Scorching Flame season perfectly. Fire, Intensity, aggression, pressure. Everything about her design reinforces what her mechanics are trying to achieve. And honestly, she already feels like one of the most complete thematic releases we've had in a long time, because the visuals, the skills, the sacrifice mechanics, and the chaos identity all connect naturally together. So now, this is where things become interesting, because this is only the beginning. Today was understanding. The next step is testing. And over the next days, we are going deeper. Best combinations, best synergies, real fights, counters, guides, how to actually build around her, how dangerous she really becomes inside chaos compositions. Because that's where the real answers appear. Not in theory, in battle. And honestly, I cannot wait to see what happens once heroes like Xisha, Aiden, and Kendle start interacting together inside real competitive fights, because the potential for explosive pressure here is very real. Warriors, if you want to stay ahead of this, if you want to understand this hero properly before everyone else, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, and follow this journey. Because what's coming next is where Kendle truly begins to reveal herself. And this is exactly how we play the game. Not randomly, not blindly. With knowledge, with precision, with control. We don't follow the meta, we break it. Let's break the game together.